that it? You got it?
You're
I
good?
feel like Scott has set the bar so high, all I can do is let you down. Well, thank you for having me. It's really fun to be here. Super honored by it. If you notice on like the third page of the book, Les was kind enough to endorse the book, and it meant enough to me that I made him first in line on those couple pages of endorsement. So really grateful for him and his group, and so really glad to be with you. The book's called Renegade, so let me translate that to scale architect language. We're talking about raging visionaries. I love this quote: entrepreneurship is the last refuge of the troublemaking individual. I feel that kind of sums, I'll be inclusive here, us up. Do I have any other like strong visionaries in the room? One hand, two. All right, so I will try to insult you with love and nothing else. Know that I am one of you. But today's conversation, usually I'm giving this talk to a peer group or a group of visionaries speaking their language. Today I want to use it as an advantage for you guys to understand the heart of the visionary, the heart of the renegade, so that you can walk into those conversations knowing them better, understanding their pain, ultimately building a better relationship, maybe even easier sales process for you in speaking their language and knowing maybe what they're going through a little bit. So I'm curious, who or what comes to mind when you hear the word renegades?
I mean, motorcycle, like, that's what I'm thinking. Motorcycle, long ponytail in the wind. That's what I want to see.
Anybody else? Somebody else?
I was thinking of Mavericks.
Okay. I don't know PI well enough to.
Maverick and Renegade Keynote.
Yeah. No, I mean, Maverick almost ended up on the front of that book.
I think of that famous Apple commercial. I don't remember exactly the language in it, but
Yeah.
it's
The crazy ones.
the crazy.
It's my next slide.
Yeah. Okay.
Somebody else?
Somebody wants us to break the rules and just move out of the way. We're going this direction.
Yeah.
Don't tell me you can't.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not that I want to break the rules, it's just that the rules are stupid.
It's like lighthearted. Like, I'm not just trying to wreck someone's life. I just want to do it because it's what I want to do.
Yeah.
I'm trying to earn money.
Yeah.
But it's even better, right? Right business is that way.
There's a better way. All right, so you stole my thunder, but when I put this talk together, I couldn't help remembering this commercial, so maybe somebody's seen it for the first time.
Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. About the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. While some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
Probably my favorite commercial ever made. Still gives me kind of chills and goosebumps, and I resonate with that. I'm guessing most of the renegade visionaries that you work with would resonate with that as well. That's why it's kind of so powerful. So all good talks have some humor in it, so I tried to do my best to come up with some renegade jokes. So it's like, kind of like you might be a redneck, you might be a renegade. You ready? So if you meet somebody and their business card title says dreamer, schemer, and occasionally CEO, it might be a renegade. If you've ever met somebody who cannot think without a whiteboard, they might be a renegade. If you've ever worked with someone who proposed a massive change in the organization followed by, "This will be easy," they might be a renegade. If you've ever seen someone come into the office, sloppy, sweaty mess because they had a flood of ideas on their morning run, they might be a renegade. If you've ever met someone who claims to be both a stoic and a growth hacker, they might be a renegade. I am going to start off by telling you a bit of my story, or as Scott called it yesterday, a series of eliminated facts. I was never good at following rules. My parents had a lot of them. I grew up in a very strict household, which meant that I was never allowed to go to parties or go to people's houses that they didn't know, whatever. We lived on a farm in the middle of a cornfield in rural Ohio, and my mom always had this, her kind of life motto was mud and spit. So it comes from the scripture where there was a blind man, and Jesus took what he had, and there was dirt on the ground, spit in it, made mud, and cured his eyes with it. And the metaphor was, be resourceful, take what you have at your disposal, and do something awesome with it. And I'm like, all right, I'll show you, Mom. Well, I'm not allowed to go to the party. I'll have the party here. I have a barn. I have a big boom box back in the day, right? I even had a disco ball, a PlayStation, there's a couch in the barn. This is going to be the teenage nightclub, and you're going to deal with it because I'm not allowed to go anywhere else. So there were a few months where I turned my barn in rural Ohio into a club for kids because I wasn't allowed to go anywhere. And I think that that's what first opened my eyes to kind of the renegade spirit, and that we don't have to take status quo for the way they are. We can make something new, make something better, not just for ourselves, but for the people around us. The last real job I had was just over 20 years ago now, where I got an actual paycheck. And I went to work for a guy. I got promoted pretty quickly. I worked there for 2 years, had 2 or 3 promotions, and found myself working for the CEO. We were an agency, and we had a massive client with a huge deadline for the largest trade show of their year. We were doing just a massive amount of work for them, and we were working night and days. Like, people were sleeping in the office when they could, all-nighters. It was a pretty small company. There were probably 20 of us. And when we wrapped, shipped everything off for the trade show, the CEO, the account manager, one other person, they all flew out to Vegas for the show, and we all just show up the next day, like, absolutely exhausted. All the work is done, and the morale was so low. Everybody was absolutely exhausted. So now I find myself, I'm like, what I feel like is the most senior person in the room, and I'm like, I gotta do something about this. So I just say, hey, we're all going to go to Willie's, because it's my favorite. If you haven't had Willie's in Atlanta, maybe that's where you go for lunch. I don't know how far it is from here. We're going to Willie's, 5 minutes, there it is. We're going to Willie's, we'll come back, and let's just play a game. We got a big round table, we got Willie's, came back, ended up playing some like quarter poker at the table, and had some laughs, had some good times, finished the day off. 9 o'clock that night, I get a call from the CEO. What the F are you doing? I leave for one day, and y'all are playing poker when you're supposed to be working, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, bro, are you so out of touch? You have no idea. No emotional capacity, no curiosity, I was trying to do something good for your company. And that was not the first straw, it was the last straw, so we had an I quit, you're fired conversation. Not really sure which one happened first, but that was my last day working at a job where I got a paycheck. But that sent me out starting my own company, because really that CEO, I felt, gave me some of the greatest lessons on how to not run a company. I'm like, man, if he can be successful, how much more can I be successful just doing things like the right way, caring about people? So I launched my own agency, and a lot of it was about caring for people and creating an awesome culture that had a lot of, you'll hear me use the word soul in our culture, but just a lot of character and identity and care for the people. first 5 years was a playground for my renegade spirit, because we were constantly having to figure things out. I think the chief attribute of a renegade founder is to be able to figure things out. Like, just everything's new and everything's a problem, and you've got to be able to figure things out. So we did great. We built a great team, built a great network, won some awards in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, which is the big paper here. We did some amazing work that got some publicity. It was awesome for me to be able to use like all my creativity for the sake of these projects and everything. I was feeling pretty good. And I wanted to take things to the next level. I had no idea what that meant, but of course, that seemed like the right thing to do. Let's take it to the next level. So I hired a consultant to come in and kind of take a look around the company and help us figure out how to go to the next level. I was confident, but within the first hour that they were there, I realized that what I built, what I thought I had built, was not what everybody else was experiencing. I thought we were fun and flexible. We had loose titles, loose meetings, freedom to create without much direction. But what they felt was that was chaotic. I thought I was taking mediocre work to the next level by jumping in at the last minute and suggesting like, okay, let's do this, we can do this, and we can do this, and we can do this. And they were frustrated by the lack of clarity on the front end, process through the middle, me jumping in at the last minute. We had even built an awesome office. This is like 20 feet in the air. There's a foam pit underneath it. As far as I know, it was like the only office that actually had a climbing wall in it. How cool is that? We had a foosball table before that became a cliche, culture. We have a foosball table before all that, but we had all this, and what I heard that day was people just wanted clearer job descriptions, right? And so I kind of went home a little bit devastated. What I built was pretty good. It was, but it wasn't working for everyone. And I realized that day that we all work in two-story office buildings. There's the story that we see, and then there's the story that everybody else sees. There's a big, big disconnect. Renegades get success, but they get success through heroics. They get success by their grit, their ingenuity, their creativity, and it gets them through that startup phase. It gets them through early fun, because it is fun for them because that's how they're wired. But there's no real trust with the team. Your team has no way of actually making decisions, so you become the bottleneck, and that becomes almost an identity of the renegade, is that they can make all these great decisions for the whole organization, but they're disempowering the organization to make their own decisions. No clear accountability, expectations, no predictable cadence to how or when things happen in the organization. So all of those things became glaring of like, of course it feels chaotic. There's no rhythm here. It also becomes slowly a prison for the renegade, where they start off and they want all this creativity. They become so dependent on themselves that there's no vacations, there's no nights, there's no you have to be there to save the day. That's your new job. Is I'm the person that can save the day. Well, the person that has to save the day has to be there. And now we're absolutely dependent. I realized what renegades all face eventually, and that's that my renegade founder thinking was no longer the fuel we needed to take us where we needed to go. It was slowly sucking the life out of me and the team. So if we in that moment go get smart and listen to society and read all the Harvard Business Review articles, it will basically tell us that renegade needs to grow up. Lose the renegade, grow up, mature the business. And I just so think that that's the wrong advice. I think that we need to capture that renegade spirit and mature the organization. And so how do we do that? and writing the book, one of the big premise in there is that that we start out as renegade founders, success through heroics. And then there's a founder's gap. There's the gap that the founders need to go through. But on the other end, they don't turn into, oh, I'm just the founder, I'm just the CEO, I'm just the leader. We need to go from renegade founder to renegade leader. Don't lose the renegade. That's the big thing here, is don't lose the renegade. The world needs that renegade energy. Your organization needs the renegade energy. But we also need some other energies. This is why I love what you guys do, and the clarity of Vops to come in here and say, okay, we're running. We got started with a lot of V. We added a lot of horsepower with some O, and now we've got to build this out into a more mature organization. But too often we're asking that renegade to be something that they're not. The primary attribute of the renegade founder is their ability they're the great improviser. They can figure things out. When we get to renegade leader, this is about providing clarity to the organization. And they don't have to be the one to do it all, to provide it all, but they need to make sure that the organization has that clarity. My organization is called System and Soul. You heard me say I built an organization with a lot of soul and realized we had no system. And there's a lot of organizations out there that will come in as a consultant, coach, and whatever, and help you with the system side. But if you don't have the soul side, it just falls flat. I love talking about this in terms of the system makes the soul side true, and the soul side makes the systems matter. If we just have systems, they don't matter because there's no soul to it. If we just have soul, it's really hard to institutionalize that because we don't have the systems to make sure that stays true. One of my first aha moments figuring this out, the other side of my story was with an organization that I went in to coach, and if there were 4 people, this sounds like a joke, I promise it's not. There was 4 people on the senior leadership team. It was 3 CPAs and a geologist. It is not the start of the joke. Well, maybe the joke is on me, but it's the only client that we mutually decided to part ways. But the aha moment for me was that when we got to like what we call the destination, where are you going, when are you going to get there, and why does it all matter? They were so aligned. I went around the room, $40 million in 3 years, $40 million in 3 years, $40 million in 3 years, $40 million in 3 years. This has never happened to me. Usually nobody has any idea, and they're all on different pages, and we've got to coalesce some answer. They were all on the same page. What in the world? How are we so clear about this? Well, there's 4 shareholders. They happen to be 3 CPAs and a geologist. They want to exit in 3 years for $40 million. And as we dug into that, their story was just that. There was no more. Which means that their story was, hey, everybody, all 60 of you employees out there, here's the story. We're going to abandon you and all of our customers in 3 years. Help us get there. My wife likes nice clothing. Like, that was the story. And I'm like, this is absolutely a soulless organization. That's not most organizations. Most organizations that have a high kind of visionary renegade, they've got this, they have this ideal for their organization. And sometimes the gap is just the ideal versus the reality. And so how do we help them get there? I've got a few tips for us, for you guys specifically, as you relate to the renegade leader. All of these fit under the king and the fool theory. Does anybody know the king and the fool theory? You're going to love it. Every single one of us, inside of us, has a king and a fool. And the one that we speak to is the one that we're going to get out. So I've stolen that, and this is the leader and the fool. Our renegade leader and the fool. The first one. 3 tips for you. First one. Bring out the leader. Bring out the leader. What can we do to bring out the leader? We want to help them see and capture what really matters to them. they have things that deeply, deeply matter to them, and it's very hard for them to articulate. So if we can ask questions to pull that out of them, one of their fears is losing those things in the organization that really, really matter to them. But they have a disconnect between it's inside of me and it's not in the organization. So of course the organization has to rely on me because it's just inside of me. How do we help them capture that, articulate that, so that it can be disseminated throughout the organization? The second thing with bringing out the leader is we've got to help them understand and see where they provide outsized returns to the organization. They've got immense capacity for something. If we read the Harvard Business Review, they've got to be everything to everybody. They've got to learn all these different skills and do all these things. We want to put them in the position where they provide outsized returns for the organization. What is their magic? What is their fairy dust? And every time they walk in the room and sprinkle this on this, it gets better. What is that for them? Some of these renegades are product focused, some are market focused, customer focused, some are culture focused. I'll give you a few examples and stories in a minute. But if we can capture that spirit of the renegade, we're going to help the organization be able to mimic that past them leading it. An example of this would be like Facebook. You've got very, very kind of renegade startup, very aggressive, and at some point they coined the term move fast and break things. Well, Mark Zuckerberg knew that as organizations mature, we mature towards safety, right? And don't get fired and CYA. He said, I want to fight against that. There was something in him that never wanted to become that. And so somehow he was able to capture this idea, move fast and break things. And once it's captured, then we can build systems around that, right? That's a soul inside of him. Now we can build systems around this idea that he wanted to make sure stayed in the organization forever, move fast and break things. So bring out the leader. Look for the leader. Bring out those attributes in him. The second thing is to delegate the fool. The fool is a very loud voice in all of us. And it's very aware of all of the things that we're not good at, that we're trying to do, that we're doing poorly, we're failing at, we're letting other people down. And the fool is constantly robbing the leader. It's constantly robbing these outsized returns. And so the way that we can help delegate the fool is help that renegade leader understand that their fool is someone else's gift. These things where you don't feel like you're doing the job you would want to do or they're not getting done, if you let go of those, there's somebody in the organization or somebody that you can bring into the organization that is their gift. They were made to do that thing. That is their fairy dust that they can sprinkle, right? The things that, man, I wish we had better coaching for our individuals, but I create the perfect plan, I put it on my calendar, I do it once, and it never happens again. It's been 2.5 years since I've coached anybody in the organization. Guess what? There's somebody that loves coaching people in your organization. And they might be able to use your plan. They might be able to make your plan a little better. But delegate the full. Once we do that, we need the connectivity between, and you guys are great at this, what are some of the tools and ideas and principles that we use in the organization to help feel comfortable delegating those things so that we make sure that, it's not, okay, I'm never going to think about them, but how do you get the feedback loops to know how they're going, how they're progressing? Most everything that we teach an organization to do in this kind of fun through early whitewater, the renegade founder is actually normally stereotypes, ill-equipped to be the one to do. And so this is where we want to be really careful not to try to change who that renegade leader is and who they're made to be. We want to help let's delegate to the people who are equipped to lead those things in the organizations, whether that be OKRs, weekly team meetings, keeping our scoreboard up to date, making sure our org chart is the right and clear for everybody, Yeah, I'm looking at you, bro. All right, so here's the third one, is to honor the renegade. Again, they're fighting the fool. And no one gives, this is part of the, it's lonely at the top. Nobody's actually giving credit to the renegade. They feel the pain of his fool, but nobody's giving credit to the renegade. And in this transition, one of the biggest fears from renegade founder to renegade leader is, well, if I'm not doing all these things, then where's my value to this organization? There is an identity issue at the core of this, where I've built my identity on making all the decisions and doing all the things and being at the center of all these things and fighting all the fires. And so to make this transition, I'm inviting all of you to be renegade therapists. Like they need a guide, a coach, a friend to help them through this. But the key for them is understanding the outsized returns that they can provide the organization if we just let them be in their sweet spot. I'll give you a few examples of these because I love when I get to see these happen. I have a CEO that when he went through this process, we put missions on our org charts instead of job titles. We put the mission, like why does this seat exist? How does it tie back to the purpose? And so when he got there and he actually stopped and asked the room, what do you guys think it is? What do you think it is in this next season? What he landed on was rent, 10-80-10. Rent, 10-80-10. The things that he thought where he added his fairy dust and created outsized returns is when people in the organization rented him his expertise for certain projects that needed ideation, innovation, ideas, connections. And then the 10-80-10 was, hey, if we're doing something big and strategic, I really want to be in on the first 10%, and I want to be in on the last 10%. You guys go do your thing in between, but I want to be included there, because that's where I can create outsized returns. And that was so freeing for him, and so clarifying for the organization. I've got one CEO that only wants to be involved on the relational side with key accounts. I have a CEO, founded the company, about a 10, 15-year-old company. In our last session, he announced to his leadership team that their COO was becoming their CEO. And he's also the chairman of the board. He is going to work in product development. He is going to be an individual contributor on a team focused on their product, because that's where his fairy dust was. Now, that's a very, very mature leader, and one that has a very generational view of his business and promoting other people into their unique ability. But that was special. That was really, really awesome. I got to interview Jesse Cole, who's the CEO of the Savannah Bananas. Anybody know who that is? All right, they're wonderful, wonderful. He's basically the P.T. Barnum of baseball, is what he is. He's got a minor league team in Savannah, and his clarity on his role as CEO, visionary, renegade of the organization. I'm sure he's been all things through all parts of the evolution of that business, but he says if it's not culture or show, I don't want to deal with it. Not I don't want to get in the weeds. I don't even want to know about it. Don't bring me an issue, don't bring me a problem, don't bring me a question, unless it has to do with culture or show. Show relates to the actual events that they put on. Like I said, it's P.T. Barnum. But that's where his outsized returns show up, is when he has a mic, has a planning board, is speaking to people and encouraging them and raising them up. So I despise talks that are informational, not transformational, so I want to give you a few things to take away that you can do practically as you're in these conversations. And I'm going to put them in the form of questions that you can ask in these conversations with these renegade founder leaders in this transition. So the first one's this. Mr. Renegade, how do we leverage your renegade advantage? We're talking about advantage this week. They have an advantage. We want to help them find it. So we ask, how do I help you leverage your renegade advantage? That lives in the middle of these three things. what do you love doing? What are you passionate about? What do you want to see change, and what do you never want to see change? What gives you immense amount of energy as you do it, and what and where can you create outsized returns? Outsized returns means I'm putting in this much energy and we're creating this much value, right? It's lopsided, immensely lopsided. The second question is, how do we capture your renegade advantage? If we're going to instill this in the organization, the first thing we've got to do is understand it, to leverage it, and then we've got to capture it. System Soul, we use a simple one-page, we call it a roadmap. Scott, do you have something equivalent?
The alignment pyramid.
Okay. So in your language, think alignment pyramid here. Like, how do we help capture this so it moves beyond just you? You don't have to own all of this. We can empower other people to own it, that are aligned with it. The third one is, how do we ensure your renegade advantage? So this is our model. This is just how I think about it. You guys put in the Scale Architects predictable success tools here, processes, methodology, but there are things related to how we design the organization, we structure processes, the bets we make as an organization, the cadence that we have with our meetings, the cadence we have with our OKRs, the cadence that we have with our coaching employees, making sure that there's the clarity of metrics. How do we know if we're winning? Too many people talk about scoreboards. They look at scorecards, like how did we do last semester? That's not very helpful. What's helpful is a scoreboard in the middle of the game to go, hey, we're down by 2, let's take a timeout and tweak our offense so that we can win the game, right? We don't want to know at the end if we won or lost. Getting clarity of where we're going, getting clarity of who we are, getting clarity of how we do our culture, how we develop our people, our model of leadership, all of those things are how we can help capture and then ensure that renegade advantage for the organization. So my mission is, I think that renegades are an endangered species. And I want your help to make sure they don't go extinct. We don't want to go into organizations and pull out the fool so that they get relegated to a corner and end up leaving and starting another company, right? They still have value to bring to these organizations, whatever stage they're in, if we can help them do that. It's so important that they need you. Somebody mentioned yesterday bringing hope back into the room. A couple of you said that in different ways, whether it's hope to get through Whitewater, or, I mean, imagine inspiring a once renegade leader out of treadmill and back to predictable success because you've now empowered, like, he did go in the corner, right? And now you're like, hey, we need you. We need you. Come back in here. And if we can do that, then our impact to organizations are huge. Some people use companies, some companies use their people to grow their business. Some companies use their business to grow people. I love working with the latter. And one of the ways that we can do this is us caring for that renegade leader, because nobody else is. Nobody else is. When we go into that organization, there's lots of work to do with lots of people, and there's other people to take care of each other, and the renegade is taking care of everybody. But we get to go as an advocate and help that renegade leader. So, last thing, help them not lose their renegade, but there's a renegade in everyone. And so, I encourage you in your coaching journey to find and not lose your renegade. And that's all I got. I promised Scott a Q&A, so hit me with what you got. Yeah.
You use the term bets, which kind of renegade attracted to me. Like, I'm guessing that's essentially the goal. Is that the term you're using essentially for like a goal that they're setting, or the strongly
Yeah.
state what
Yeah. So,
Can you repeat the question so
oh,
the
sorry.
recording catches it?
how I use the term bets. How does that relate? So I think you're right. Like renegades are really good at thinking in bets. If I hire this person, will it get us what we want? If we invest in this technology, will it give us what we want? The problem is we hire people who don't think in bets because they're not putting the chips on the table, right? So if we think about a roulette table, we have a finite amount of chips. Those are resources, time, money, energy, focus, cash, debt, whatever it is. Those are our resources. There's an opportunity cost. If I go all in on red, I've got nothing to put on black. So there's an opportunity cost, and then we need to make bets that we believe the return is worth the risk. So I apply that to, if you think about how we structure the organization, we're making a bet. How we implement a process, we're making a bet. How we invest in technology, we're making a bet. And OKR is saying, hey, we've got 4 OKRs. You guys use that term?
No, what is that?
Objective and key results. Traction world is a rock, an objective, like your big 90-day, what are we doing to mature the organization? If an organization has 4 of those, it's the clarity of what are we putting the majority of our resources on right now to make our organization better in the future. So I use it for a lot of things,
Yeah.
just to teach organizations that we're constantly making bets. It's a great question.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so here's my question, and Les will know what I'm talking about. I worked in critical success terms of Marxist visionary, and my goal was to help that founder do exactly what you said, to try to find his gift, which in that organization is to stop time to micromanage, but to be the innovator and to allow other people to do the things that want to do. I did not succeed in doing that, which is why I left. So, how have you dealt with situations when the founder cannot grasp that he has a gift?
Yeah. So I got a call about a month ago from a PE firm who had a very, very similar problem. So we go work with this company, this is the situation, this is the CEO. If he can't, figure it out, then he's not going to be around. We're going to have to replace him. And I dug into it, and I talked to a few people in his organization, and I said no. He's not ready to let go. He's not ready to mature. And one of the lessons that I've learned the hard way too many times, I was too slow, is you can't want something more for somebody than they want for themselves. And so there are points where they haven't felt the pain of the bottom here enough to a high enough degree that they're not willing for the organization to make the shifts without them. Again, they don't even have, this is the trick. We all think that for that to happen, he's got to massively lose that renegade spirit. And the truth is he doesn't. We just have to.
They think that they do though.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. And so part of the message of the book, part of the message that I would love for you guys to champion is like, no, keep the renegade, but you've got to allow the company to mature.
Amen.
Can I add a bit of perspective because I know the situation I was talking about, and also because it's, I think, indicative of a very generic issue that you're right on the spot. No, just for some reason people always said. But if you look at the founder's guide, there are 3 potential buckets you're going to find yourself working in. It's either with a renegade who sees it, they may not know that terminology, but they sort of get it, and they fail and succeed and fail and succeed, but they want to get there. And there are 2 other categories, and Benji, you've already essentially described them. One goes back to something we started with yesterday, which is the imposter syndrome. We're talking about how to deal with the imposter syndrome. And one of the things I've discovered is that you cannot deal with imposter syndrome until you deal with what your default way of dealing with imposter syndrome is, which is typically one of 2 things. It's either my chosen route, which is self-deprecation, right? If you're the sort of person who constantly deflects, never accepts prey, all that sort of stuff, you've got to deal with that first in order to get to deal with imposter syndrome. But the other one, which is common with founders, is swagger and bluster, and ownership and control. It's a way of not facing down the demon, which is imposter syndrome. And so they won't let go of all of those unhealthy renegade attributes because it leaves them sitting at night really, really feeling the imposter syndrome big time, which actually would be a good thing to do because that's the most people. The second category are those that, and these are the ones I have a heart for. They don't want to change. I love this, right? I'm a crazy maker and I want to continue. Stop doing business with them, leave their company, go elsewhere, but let them be. You know, you actually had both of those in your guy. There was both those things for you. And, you know, Benji's last comments were the right one, right on the button. Sometimes you just got to knock yourself out. How's that working for you, man? See ya.
Well, thank you, I appreciate hearing your perspectives too.
I haven't heard that about the 2 ways to deal with imposters. I love that. I'm stealing it. My coach says that CEOs are like a tuxedo in the front and a hospital gown in the back.
Yeah, and sometimes you put the gown on the wrong way around. Show themselves what they are.
Any questions?
Could I ask a follow-up to that?
There you go.
No, I will not put it on.
So following up Melissa's question, you had mentioned with that scenario that after some conversations and things, you walked away. What were those red flags and triggers that you saw that made you go, yeah, this is not a tenable situation for us?
Probably the primary was that the renegade didn't see there was a problem. So you know, if they're not face to face, if they're not willing to address the problem that everybody else is telling them there is, then there's not the humility or the eagerness to find a way out of it. It takes a level of humility, and that's probably the swagger that Les is talking about. If they have too much swagger and they're not willing to let that go, they'll learn. It'll just be a longer, harder road for them.
So my follow-up is that we all want to help everyone win and succeed, but that's the great thing. So has there been a tool or an assessment just so maybe it takes them out of that, no, everything's fine, to, oh man, there actually is a problem. Like, has there been success stories of, I'm not trying to make them look like an idiot or make them feel dumb, but this assessment shows them.
Yeah. We actually have 2 we use. One's a diagnostic on the organization, and one's a leadership 360. That's a very lightweight one. You know, it's 20 questions, not 200. The problem is, Scott kind of said something about this yesterday. Like, data is not the same as emotion, and data isn't usually enough for us to feel the pain to change. And so I can give them the data, like the 2-story building, both on the organization and themselves. Like, you're telling yourself this, everybody else is experiencing this. You're telling yourself this, everybody else is experiencing this. But unless they're willing to take on the weight of that, it's just up here and hasn't moved.
One really fun thing to do is, so you know, people come up and give me their card after an event, and you know, I really want to scale. You know, you look at the card. If you really want to scale, take founder off your card. Stop calling yourself founder. And just, I mean, listen to what they say next, because they'll either get it or they don't.
That's
right?
so good.
Because it's having founder your card is like saying, no, right?
Yeah. Well, it's not a role. It's something you did in the past.
Right. And it's also, it's a trump. It's like nothing else counts, I decide, right?
Yeah. That's what the founder thing always, like, feel like this. It's like, okay, well, what do you do? Like, I founded this thing, but what do you do? Right? I would say there's a guy in town that has a peer group, and he raised up ancient at this point, old guy, but when he raised up his group, and he was really successful at it, which is really hard for some of these peer group chairs. So I said, what did you do? What was your secret? And he said, I did the same thing every time. I'd come in, chit chat for a little while, learn about the business, just relational connection. At some point I said, how long have you been here? 10 years? You've been around this thing for 10 years? What all would you change if you could? Oh, well, our accounting system and this and our market and this person, our team doesn't do this and blah, 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 blah. And they spill all these things out. And he just goes, would you like help with that? Because the reality is he just told you he's been here for 10 years and hasn't fixed any of those things. And it kind of, so sometimes that simple process can be a way to tear down some of the walls to get them to, yeah, I would like help changing some of those things.
Would every visionary leader, like with the VOP scores, be a renegade, or is there like different levels of renegade? And that's what I'm trying to, because there's some other things that are a mix in there, and then I think that gets, that maybe squashes the renegade in them, or?
Well, first of all, I do realize that I'm using massive stereotypes.
Yeah.
And I think that there's little pieces that, there's pieces to pull out here that are applicable. I think you might be able to answer that better if I could put you on the spot.
I think it borrows a little bit from John's, what are the two categories?
Inwardly sound and
No, John Ritchie's, not John Ritchie, what's he call them? Not arsonists and,
bureaucrat.
yeah, bureaucrats and what? What was the other one?
Arsonists.
Arsonists. And so one of the coaches that we both know said people basically fall into two categories, bureaucrats or arsonists, right? It's kind of the worst case version of each of them. Those roughly split VO and PS. So a lot of the renegade style is going to be VO dominant, and but the point that Ben's made here toward the end is that I think when each of the styles shows up in their strength, they have renegade capacity, right? So when you get the strength of each of the styles, even synergists, there's a little bit of like, it bends everything else toward it. And that's what we need from all four styles. So I think the stereotypical renegade founder is going to be dominant visionary, right? That's probably the closest proxy. But I think one of the things I really like about it is that when you look at each of the styles and when they really show up in their strength, they all have to go through this arc. They all have to move from the maverick, I'm going to do it my own way, the bureaucrat, I'm going to do it and I'm going to do it the right way no matter what anyone else thinks. And going through the bottom of that and coming out on the other side, what we would call a more synergistic leader, but a better version of themselves. That same arc exists for all of them.
Nothing to add, Your Honor.
More questions? All right, fantastic. Thanks.
I do have one last question.
Yeah.
Can you give us the, that you have on your email? That's it. I love that.
Is that a plug for the 261?
Yeah.
All right, so I have a
That
daily
was
email.
fantastic.
It will take you 10 seconds to read every day, but it's a leadership reminder, tip, tool. It's mostly things that we all know but need reminded, but it's the261.com. You can find it there. Thank you. It's very, very good. Highly recommend.
Well, thank you, Ben. Appreciate it, man. Awesome session.
Yes.
We will come back in 20 minutes. Put us at 10:25 by my watch. 10:25.